Hi everyone, Michelle Cordero here with ASIS Massage Education. Welcoming you again to our weekly live stream. We're here every Friday, 1 o'clock Arizona time. I am very excited and happy to welcome our guest today is Kevin Ramsey, LMT, who is the newest board member of the Arizona State Board of Massage Therapy. He represents the massage therapy members. He fills the role as the massage therapist on the board. And so I invited him on today to chat a little bit about behind the scenes of the State Board of Massage Therapy and kind of getting a better understanding of what their role is in helping us massage therapists, or what they actually can oversee, do oversee, and kind of clearing up some confusion and misconceptions that have been out there, and talking a little bit about why it's important that massage therapists should know a little bit more about the very board that is overseeing them. So without further ado, let's bring in Kevin and say hello. Hello, Mr. Ramsey.
Hello, hello.
Hi. Thanks for coming on today. I'm really happy that we were able to make this work. So people know that I met Kevin a few years ago, actually, through his role with Massage Envy and the education aspect of training their therapists, but also you have been amazing help with connecting with our students and helping them with different aspects of massage therapy training and just kind of getting better understandings of what it's like to work in different facilities and things like that. So we've had a great relationship with you and the company for a while there. So when you came on the board, I was really excited to see that you were going to do that. So and now seeing you in action, and we talked about this the other day, I really impressed with already what you've brought to the table. So so thanks for coming on and agreeing to chat. So
thanks for inviting
so first, how did you get into massage therapy in general?
So I get into massage therapy around 2010, and it was really based on a prior injury I had. I was in a car accident a few years prior, and I had been doing all the regular things, going to my primary care physician. He would recommend plenty of different things that I didn't really find was addressing the core issue of kind of what was taking my recovery longer than I thought. Oh geez, how old was I then? 20 or so, 21. I got the same old thing, oh, you're young, you'll bounce back, you'll heal quick, all these different things. Really, I wasn't super happy with the quality of care that I was receiving with my primary care. And so I branched out a little bit and started looking into chiropractic and massage therapy, something that I had really never considered before. And I found just the level of attention that I received and the level of communication and really just that human aspect of, treating me as I'm an individual and not, another client for the day or another patient for the day. And I really clicked with the chiro world. I really clicked with the massage therapist who, asked a lot of questions that my doctor had, and they were really interested to understand how it was impacting my life and what it was keeping me from doing. And and they really took a well-rounded approach to me, my well-being, my overall health. I really appreciated that. And so I started to see, positive results, recovery from, my injury. I was able to kind of get back and being active to what I wanted to be doing. And, it really sparked an interest of me, to learn more about the profession of osteopathic medicine, of massage therapy. And I just started to look around at different programs in the area. And, I figured, what's the worst that could happen is that I could help people, day in, day out, compared to maybe getting into, at the time I was considering computer sciences and, really starting to feel some of that wear and tear on my body just from posture related activity of that work. So, so I got into it, and I really found a huge level of interest in just learning about the human body, how it works, how do things change, and how can I make a positive change. And so, once I got started, it really hasn't slowed down from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So we've also talked before about how you have a lot of experience in different aspects of the field and different working environments. Can you share a little bit of where you've worked in?
Yeah, sure. So I went to Pima Medical Institute, and there was a in-school clinic located there. And it operated much the same as many businesses do now. And so we practiced quite a bit of, standard spa clinic sort of work. But I also had a huge interest in the medical side of massage therapy. And so I saw clients, ranging in any number of different backgrounds and pathologies that I worked with. And I started my career after licensure at a chiropractor's office. And so I saw, quite a bit of people coming in, billing with insurance and working very specific type work. So we did a lot of stretching and trigger point release. We did a lot of, neuromuscular work. And my chiropractor was able to teach me a few things as well and got me into some, instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization techniques, gua sha, different, not really quite cupping, but similar sort of approaches there. So I started within the medical field. I worked under 3 chiropractors at the time, and I just felt it was a huge boon to continue my education experience, to continue learning throughout. And it was really just fascinating to me to continue being a student after I had been licensed. I was there for about a year, and then I wanted to diversify a little bit and kind of understand, what different parts of the business or the industry would look like. And so I ended up going to Massage Envy and interviewing with their assistant manager at the time. And they offered me a job on the spot. From there, I've been with the company ever since then. I really, the learning that I got at the doctor's office was fascinating and profound to me. And then when I went to Massage Envy, I started really interacting. I was the only therapist at my chiro's office for a long while, and then we had 1 or 2 other ones that came on further down the line. But when I was at Massage Envy, I was working with 12 or 20 other therapists, and so I said, "Oh, wow, I don't know hardly anything at this point." And so I was able to get on their table and ask them questions and receive work from them and kind of hear how they operated their career and their practice. And that really, to me, kind of reset my thinking process, saying, okay, now I'm day one student all over again. And I was able to learn from, people that have been in the industry longer than I have. It was a fascinating experience. I really took to quite a few mentors that I worked with, people that have been licensed already for, 10 or 15 years at the time. And from there, I just really grew into, how can I help not only my patients, but my clients, but how can I also help my coworkers, my colleagues, my friends and other licensees that were, in the same building and maybe at another clinic. I moved into leadership. I grew that into, sort of putting together little training sessions. And from there, I was able to pitch the idea to my CEO at the time to, really ramp up the training and the education within our organization. And it just kind of took off from there. My interest in education never slowed down. I continued to take classes. Some years I doubled or got close to tripling the required amount of hours. And I feel that's helped me personally, but I also feel like I've been able to share some of that stuff with other therapists. And, my interest in that realm has kind of driven me towards the education side of things. And that's why I continued to, put on different trainings, but also become an approved education provider with NCBTMB. I have my own continued ed classes and my own business that I formed last year. And so it's been a fascinating growth process for me. And, even now that I'm a teacher, I still feel that excitement every time I'm the one in the student seat, and I just love showing everything that I can. So
I love. There's something about educating. It's and in this field too. I think I would think any teacher has these moments where you just have those aha moments, and you're feeling this greater purpose and this greater sense of like I'm helping more people, and they're helping the people, and it's this whole ripple down effect. And it's amazing absolutely. What one moment in the classroom can do for so many people. Do you think some of that kind of feeling or intention went behind you going to run for the position for the board member position?
I think it did. I had been attending board meetings as an audience member just to, it was one aspect of the field that I had never really been very educated on, or it's not a large focus in most school curriculums.
Right.
And so I just started to, I was just curious, what is this entity that really oversees the licensing in Arizona, and each state that has a license. And so I started attending as an audience member, and really understanding, oh, this is what it looks like at the state level, and I was really curious to learn, and so I started attending more and more meetings, really seeing how does the flow of the meeting look, what are they talking about,
Right.
what is on the plate of priorities at the state level, and then I really started to gain an interest and say, well, if I'm getting into the teaching world, if I'm getting into the education world, how can I take what I know as a practitioner, what I know as a teacher, and what I know as, I guess, a collective voice of the industry, all the people that I interact with, and how can I take this and, again, create benefit for the majority of people, whether it be the public body or the professional body, and see how we can further, move the massage industry forward into public acceptance, into legal and medical acceptance, and how can we further support the licensees that are active within our state to, continue to raise the bar of what we can do, to continue to, advocate for massage therapy, modalities, services, techniques, abilities, on the whole spectrum, so that we can really see massage therapy go where we all would like to see it go.
Right, exactly. How long have you been on the board now?
I've been on the board now since the end of 2019, October, I believe, is when I was sworn.
And you are the newest member, right? I'm pretty sure you
Yes.
were the newest. Yeah. So,
yes.
So even as the newest member, it's like it's still a bit of time you've been serving already.
Yeah, I've been serving now. It's funny when people ask me, I'm like, I've been serving this long already, but I still feel like every month I'm learning something. Every time I'm interacting with other board members, the board staff, I'm learning something, and I'm able to implement, what I like to believe as the positivity that I want to bring to the board, but also kind of steer the industry, at least in Arizona, in the right direction. And so it's been a learning experience. It's been fascinating, and to not to everybody, it's not the most exciting thing to watch or to engage in, but it is definitely important, and it's definitely it's been a huge boon to my respect for the industry, even more so.
Right. Yeah. It's every time I attend one of the meetings, I definitely learn a lot more about the workings behind the scenes, kind of understanding what the roles are and stuff. So, and one thing we were talking about that a lot of people don't understand is there's the board, there's the board, and then there's the staff. So can you explain a little bit the composition of what the board is, general idea of like what their role is? I don't want you to have to go through everything. And then what's the staff, and like kind of explain that difference.
So I'll describe the board staff first. So the board staff is comprised of a small group of individuals, and they handle all the stuff that you don't see. So when you submit your license, they're the ones that are checking all the boxes, making sure everything is done correctly. They also interact with the legislative bodies. So if there's new language being proposed, or if there's something in the government body that is interacting with the massage therapy board, they're the ones that are doing all that stuff. There's also an investigator on the board, and he's the one that will take a complaint and investigate it from however many steps that it takes for him to have presentable evidence or content for us during the meetings. So the staff handles all the stuff, all the administrative stuff, more or less. And there's a lot more to it than that, but to not overburden you and your listeners, the board members themselves actually make up the massage therapy board itself. And so there's 3 licensed massage therapists and 2 public members on the board for a total seat number of 5. And every month we meet in a public forum. For the past year, it's been virtually like we're doing here. But usually it takes place at the Capitol in Phoenix. And so ultimately what these meetings are good for, we address all the complaints that have been submitted most recently. So if somebody's got a complaint against their license, or, malpractice, or some sort of, major complaint that would be needed to look at and question at the legal level, questioning their license. That's what we ask questions on and defer, and we come to a conclusion about what sort of actions are we going to take or not take against the licensee. We also have space open for any public comments, and so anybody can come to the board and they can say, hey, I think the state of Arizona should consider this when we're talking about massage therapy as a whole. And we'll take it, and while as that content is being delivered or talked about to us, we can't deliberate on it then, but we put it on a future agenda to like further expand upon what is it that person says. So I always say, you know, if you're interested to have a voice or have an impact, you know, speak up during the call to the public portion of the board meetings.
Yeah, can you explain that a little more? Because I know when I went, when we were in person, I remember I went in and didn't realize like you had to have submitted your request to be heard before that moment. So
Right.
is that kind of still, even in the online version of the virtual meeting, is that still the process if somebody wants to bring forward a comment or concern?
Yeah, it is only for just keeping the time frame
Right.
well understood. Typically, anything that happens in a public board meeting has to be on the agenda ahead of time. And so if we have like 6 people that raise their hand, say, I want to say something, then that kind of pushes the timetable behind. So it's preferred that you submit that sort of request beforehand. But this past year has been a little bit more flexible. We've been able to kind of address as a whole, is there anybody else that wants to speak during this call to the public? And, you know, we might have a couple here and there, but for the most part, it's usually one to 2 people each time.
Yeah, that's I was curious how that process worked. So that's but in general, people can't just be like, I don't think what you did to that person is correct, right? That's not something we're asking for the public to be able to do that. Yeah. So let's see. So at the board meeting, you said, you know, you're listening to, you know, some of the public complaints or I mean, some of the situations that have come up before. What struck me as really interesting is understanding that that process is lengthy and it might not get resolved at the first time around. So can you explain a little bit about the steps? I know you have the investigator looking in the information, presenting that. Once it's presented to the board, what's the process?
So once it's presented to the board, you know, the investigator has done all his work, sometimes days or weeks, or it might sometimes take months, depending on the situation beforehand. And then we're presented with a packet of information in which we then build, you know, our questions based off of that and the interaction of the complainant and the licensee. And so the first step of the process is the investigative review. And this is just a general overview of what does the complaint entail and any extraneous questions that the board members might have. And this is just to help kind of clarify anything that was submitted or, you know, just provide us with more details to go on. If we find that there's more information necessary or it needs to be kind of, I guess, elevated to a higher form of review, which would really an instance like if in our heads we determine, you know, oh, we need more information, and so we need to request it to whoever was involved. We can postpone it to continue the investigative review. We can elevate it to any number of different steps, primarily being a formal interview, and this will be, you know, really like the legal process. You know, the people can bring their attorneys or you know, submit additional information. It gives us time to submit to businesses, hey, this case is being brought for a formal interview instead of just an investigative step. We can move it into a formal hearing, which would then be, you know, the proper place in which we would administer disciplinary action. And so if it's like a very serious complaint or you know, if the complaint is surrounded in some sort of negligence or something of that sort, to where we would issue a disciplinary action as opposed to a non-disciplinary action, which they are wide and varied and somewhat complicated, but then it would happen in that forum. So initially, it's the initial investigation, and then, you know, questioning by the board, and then, you know, we often will try and resolve it then, so that that process isn't drug out specifically for, you know, the complainant or the licensee's sake, so that they're not dealing with stuff for months and months to come.
Right.
But, you know, if more needs to be found, if more questions need to be asked, and to give people the right, you know, to their counsel, you know, it might be moved forward another month to be addressed in either the formal interview or the formal hearing stage.
Right. Yeah.
And as easy as I can make it sound, that's about the general gist of it, but there's a lot more in between that goes on.
Right.
And outside of the cases that we see, there's always the executive director's report. And so the executive director of the Massage Therapy Board, he'll give us up to date, you know, what's happening with the legislature. Is there anything that's being talked about at the state capitol? He'll give us information on or input on different things that we've discussed in the past. So some of them might be, what do we want to see for continued education? What do we want to see for maybe even just the license itself? Do we want to see pictures on there? Do we want to update them to have XYZ information? It could be anything related to the licensure of a therapist. And then there's always the option for the board members themselves to discuss and deliberate, what do we want to see and what do we want talked about for a future agenda. And this allows us to, one, have this conversation in a public space so we can kind of discuss what does the board see as a priority within the state of Arizona, as well as, give the opportunity for the members or the public or the licensees who are listening in, gives them an opportunity to know, hey, this is coming up in the next board agenda. I want to speak to it. And so during that call to the public portion, they can say, hey, you guys talked about this last time. This is what I think, and maybe this is what a collective of us think about this topic, and we think you should consider this when you're doing your conversation. And so it's a very thorough and back and forth process, and I always like that back and forth. I'm a huge fan of understanding what other people have to say and bringing in a different point of view, because I don't want to pretend to know everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the continuing education, and I learned something myself. Not that I know everything, but one of the things I learned on the last call is because we've been definitely keeping track of the last couple of meetings, especially because as things are kind of changing with things being closed and things like that, things are getting more open now, and mandates are getting loosened. We're like waiting for that notice that continuing education credits are going to be due again. And so could you speak to that a little bit of what you're limited in, because it's not, my understanding, it's not exactly your decision as a board, it's coming down from the governor. So can you explain that process a little bit?
Right. So the governor's executive order that was issued in 2020 really gave some ease to a lot of people in the public and the professional forum. It was a mixed bag of how it was received, but ultimately the board did decide to waive the requirements for certain things. So like fees that were involved with renewing your license, the requirements for continuing education for your license renewal. And it was based on the executive order that was given by the director or by the governor. And so, as of right now, the only thing really impacting licenses in Arizona or massage therapy licenses in Arizona is the waiver of continued education hours. A few months ago, we brought back the renewal fees and the application fees and things like that. And so due to the governor's direction, we did end up making those decisions. But now we're at the point, like you had said, with things kind of winding down, and hopefully we're seeing that the end of the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel. We have started discussing when is the appropriate time to bring these back. When is it going to be least burdensome to the licensees in general? Ultimately, it was meant to ease burdens so that we didn't have to think about, if we're all out of work, how are we going to pay the renewal fees, the application fees, and pay for classes, and even find classes that might not be happening.
Exactly.
And so now we're discussing when is the right time to bring them back, and how are we going to go about doing that, because in Arizona, license renewal happens on your birthday, and so we want to make sure that we give plenty of forethought to how we bring back this requirement. And so in the end of the day, even since the start of last year, I've always recommended to all my colleagues and all the people that I interact with who are licensed therapists, I say, don't give up on your education just because they're not requiring it of you anymore. It's always within our best interest to continue learning, taking these classes, even if it's online, or even if it's something like tax code or ethics or something like this that doesn't isn't part of your hands-on work. It's still important to know and diversify your education and just kind of broaden your horizon. You never know what you're going to be interested in until you approach that. That's kind of where I'm at. I didn't ever think I was going to be a teacher of massage, and ever think I was going to be, on the state level, sitting as a board member. But I tried to look at it, thought that it was interesting, and thought that I could have a beneficial impact.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and we see people, it's amazing, all through this whole time, people calling us, do you have classes? And We've started ramping back up a little bit, and we have a couple on the schedule right now, but we're of course getting more calls now. People are thinking about that, but I know there are a lot of therapists out there that don't ever want to stop learning and have more, like you were saying, 2 to 3 times more than you need every renewal period.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, don't stop taking those classes just because it's not required, right?
Right.
But also know you might have to soon, so start putting that on your agenda. I always hate when we get these calls like, my birthday's next week, I need 12 hours, what do you have? I'm like, I can't help you this week if you like planned ahead a little bit. So
Right.
I mean, that's
Right.
a little bit of a challenge, right?
It's the real sure.
Yeah. Do you find that talking to other massage therapists or even public people out in the public, that they have a misconception of what it is that the board does, and or how much power you actually have to be able to change things like right away or even at all, depending on what the situation is?
I do find that there is, some form of misconception, but I don't think it's ever routed in. I think it comes from a place of really just that knowledge not being really openly available to people. You kind of have to do a lot of self-research and kind of a lot of reading on your own. Like I said earlier, it's not really something that's talked about in great detail during school curriculums for the most part. And so people just hear massage board, and those are the people that I send my info to, and they send me my license, and then, if I get in trouble, then I got to be answering to them. And that's what I find is most, and none of that is wrong, but there's a lot more that goes into it, and especially the difference between the board staff, which is their state government employees, and the board members, which are appointed by the governor, and we sit on the seat, and we actually kind of direct the staff in the board meetings and based off of public input. And so there is a lot of misconception, but it's all personally understandable. It's all understandable in the sense that it's not information that's just like out there, like here's what this means. And you got to kind of learn about it and understand it a little bit yourself. But ultimately, I would say the biggest thing is that as a board member, I have nothing to do with the entire process of licensure. I have nothing to do with, any of that, but I'm always happy to help anybody who's curious about it. My name is on the website, and they send me an email. They might find, maybe my LinkedIn or something, and they send me an email and say, hey, Kevin, I sent my license renewal 3 weeks ago. What's going on with it? I don't know. I'm
not in the office, or I'm not the one doing it, right?
But the general misconception I find is that understanding how government bodies work and how government agencies work, and that it is a very lengthy and multi-step process that can take often weeks, more often months longer than people would like to see. But understanding that that's that quality of consistency with every step, making sure that all the boxes are checked, that all details have been taken care of, that all the the proper avenues have been followed, and it's the process that really takes quite a long time. And I think that's the biggest misconception that people have is if they say one thing, they want it changed next week, when really it takes quite a few months, sometimes years, to make those differences. I would say other than that, though, the basic understanding is pretty accurate of the board. And I would say, if there's one thing that I think could help most people understand what the board does and how it operates, is attend the meeting yourself. You don't have to stay for the whole time. You can pop in, an hour into the meeting, even just like sitting for a half an hour and kind of listening to the board members or the people that are speaking before the board. Is a great way to learn more about what it does, how it operates, and what the function of it is.
Yeah, even reading the agenda, I think, is eye-opening, just seeing what all the things are. Because I know some people think, oh, you guys just listen to all the complaints all the time. And that is a portion of the meeting. And depending on how many cases there are, it could be a lengthy portion of the meeting. But there's a lot more that's going on with that as well. And that massage therapists don't always know that you can get continuing education credits for sitting in on the meetings as well. So that's a really nice thing. So I'm for people to make sure that they know this, that the website massagetherapy.az.gov. And if you click on, I believe it's meetings, it has the list of all the upcoming meetings, as well as the past meetings and the minutes that were taken then. About a few days before the next meeting, usually the agenda's put up there, or the agenda's probably the week before or so, and then the link to join. And it's just a simple Google Meet link that you get in, and it's really, really, really simple to be able to join.
That's right.
I think that's really, really helpful. I found it interesting. I told you this the other day that like you were just talking about the lengthy process. Like, just to be able to talk about a topic, you have to get it to be put on the next agenda. And I was laughing so hard with the I know his name is Seamus, but he's the lawyer, like the consultant there. There's a lawyer.
Yeah, the Assistant Attorney General. Yep.
Assistant Attorney General. Thank you. And I should know that by now, because he says it every time he introduces himself. Like he says who's talking, which I think is hilarious. Like, we know who you are, Seamus. But he was like, no, you can't talk about that now. You can't do it. It's not on the agenda. Yep. So knowing that there's all these checks and balances too that you have to abide by and figure out, and it's a lot. I hear a lot of, can we talk about that now? Which order do we do this in? And you have all the pieces, everyone helping out with directing it as well. So that's it's a lot. It's a lot to process for sure.
It is, and like you said, it's a system of checks and balances to really keep everything secure and everything within the public forum. We're not allowed to speak about things behind doors, and we're not privy to information that isn't going to happen at the public meeting. And so it's a really great way to understand too. It's like, just because I'm on the board doesn't mean I have a whole lot of power to change something. I'm limited to what my responsibilities are during the public times. And then once in a while, I might be reached out to for something specific that's, not necessarily state or law or one of the complaint related, but it's just like, hey, we're thinking about setting up something in the future for this kind of a meeting that we'll post to the board website. What do you think? So, that's about where I sit on it. Yeah.
It's really good information. It's interesting. And I appreciate how I tell stories all the time. Like, I'm not glad COVID happened, but I can see many things that have come out of it that make me a little more happy that I don't have to drive down to the state to Phoenix every time for the meeting, and I can multitask while listening to the meeting. So it's
there's a silver
really
lining.
easy today.
Yeah. And I know for the future that even if/when things go back to being the live format like they used to, where we hold the board meetings live and in person, we were even talking about this before 2020, and that we want to have audio visual available so that you can tune in even if you're not there in person.
Yeah. I'll get more people involved, I think, because that was a deterrent, I think, from people like, oh, I don't want to go down there Monday morning, be in my PJs, my day off,
It was even more fun when they were on Fridays.
Wrapping it up for margarita happy hour, probably. That's funny. Let's see. We talked about misconceptions, licensing. Oh, so you mentioned a couple of people had to reach out about their renewals and such, and what advice do you have for anybody who's a little frustrated with the time process? And I know you probably don't have a magic answer, but
sure.
To maybe an understanding of what's really going on behind the scenes is not just necessarily people not doing things. Can you explain maybe what the process why it might be taking a long time?
So one thing my mother always taught me growing up was patience is your number one virtue. And I think it holds very much true when you're interacting with state-oriented processes, because as we've discussed, things take a long time. Understanding that the actual board staff that handle all the licensing processes and all the things that you don't see happening, verifying your information and running your fingerprints and, all these things, it's really limited. The entire board staff is just a handful of people. And then there's two individuals that are actually, able to process the licensures, whether it be initial applications or renewals. And so understanding that I think the number is around 12,000 or so licensed therapists in Arizona. There's something I think it's like 40 or 60,000 in the database, but active licenses is 12,000. So they're dealing with, potentially 1,000 license renewals every month.
Mhm.
And so understanding that there's a whole lot of workload that goes into what I might personally consider maybe an underfunded board is that there's a couple of people handling this huge workload. So they have a lot of weight on their shoulders, and they're often trying to keep a very strict schedule on things.
Mhm.
And so my recommendation for anybody is practice some patience and understand that, like, especially in this past year, license renewals or even initial applications are taking, sometimes 3 or 4 extra weeks on top of what it normally would have taken, just for that information to be gone through. I do know that they review things as they come in, but and actually moving them through the process, they just take it as, when was this one taken? We want to make sure that we take care of this one first. Even if there's issues that go along with it, they're going to handle them in the order that they're received. But in the end of the day, the contact information for the board staff is there on the website. I believe it's info@massageboard.gov. I think that's right.
Massageboard.az.gov. info@massageboard.az.gov.
Yeah, there you go. And if you have questions, or if you're unsure about maybe some of the language that's on the application or what you might need, they'll typically respond to those in a quicker manner than if you waited till they're rejected. If you just sent it off and then waited for it to be rejected for maybe whatever reason, they're usually quicker to those responses. But the government process is a lengthy one, and it does require some patience to to make it through with some deal of understanding.
Yeah. I know. And I know for us, we try to get everything all together. And I know the fingerprinting part for new applications that is a big of the challenge, is because that's out of their hands, right? They're sending that off to somebody else, another agency to develop them, talking like it's film, to process them and doing that. So that can add to that time frame as well. We get a lot of calls too sometimes with people I tried the board and just wondering if you guys have more information. We're not the board. So I can imagine those are kind of similar situations and questions that you're getting. You're well, I'm not the staff, but I'd be happy to try to look into this for you. So which you've offered. You told me before, if anyone ever had any issues, that we could let them know, that we can get in touch with you. So I'm going to post I hope this is okay. Your personal website where you're building where you have your practice information, but I'm assuming there's a contact information on there that they can get in touch with you there.
Yep. If you click the contact button, it'll just open a new window for you to directly send me an email. So check it every day. So more than happy to take anything coming my way.
Yeah, I'm thinking you might get some fan mail, because we just got this wonderful comment here that you are the bee's knees. So I can't agree more about that.
I love the way that comment is structured, because I often, I'm only in my younger 30s, but I often say things like groovy or rad or some words that are very outdated by now. So I love that. I love it.
This person's also in that time frame age range as well, and we kind of wonder about that too. I'm looking at you, Jess. So anything else to convince a massage therapist kind of on the fence about getting more involved in the board processes and learning about what's going on and coming to a meeting? Is there anything, any other tidbits that you can say to encourage them to get involved, and why?
I would say that it's been my understanding over my career and through my experience that all massage therapists just really want nothing more than to help other people. And when massage therapists are faced with maybe a hardship, or maybe they disagree with something, or they would like to see something more in the industry, it's often confined to maybe their comfort zone, or their close friends or colleagues or coworkers. And while I think those sort of conversations are important and absolutely powerful, oftentimes therapists too are a little bit more hesitant to voice those opinions, or to voice those concerns, or to voice those ideas. We may have a lot of experience on the board, but we're not going to have all the answers. And so I'm always looking for people to come forward with creative ideas, or with progressive ideas that are going to further the industry. And if there's one thing that I can recommend is definitely collect your ideas and what it is that you want to say, but understand that some change might not happen unless you're the one to speak about it. I had the same thoughts when I was first attending these meetings. I said, well, what is my voice really going to do? And it wasn't until I started to actually put my voice out there and say, what was on my mind or what I thought should be going on, that I actually got that conversation started with some other people, and they were able to have some back and forth with me. And I was able to understand their point of view and really listen to them and not just say, well, I think it needs to be this way because I know best. But I was able to understand, okay, this is why it's this way now. But what can we do to maybe move it in a way forward that's going to be, great for all of us or beneficial for all of us? And so, if I had one thing to recommend, it would say, if you have conversations about, the industry or your licensure or even the state board model, collect your ideas and keep it in a format that you're comfortable to present, and stop by a board meeting because, again, you never know what your voice is going to enact a change in, and you could be an inspiration for the next best thing that happens.
Yeah, I love that. And also, I didn't bring this up before, I put it in the list, but every once in a while we get a hint of someone's going to try to change our law and someone's going to downgrade our hours and the governor wants to do this and that. How much should we really be worried about things like that changing so quickly, knowing that now we know how things have to go through the proper channels and stuff, and how do we best keep up besides going to the board meetings and being involved there, but realistically, is that ever something that we're going to have to be really, really worried about or concerned, or is that going to happen anytime on the horizon?
So I would say don't be too worried about don't be too worried about it. I totally understand what you're saying, and I've heard a lot of these conversations myself, and I've received a lot of phone calls about these topics. Even just in the past year. Ultimately, there's nothing that's ever going to change in law, statute, or regulation unless it's talked about in the public forum. And so, there's never going to be some kind of shadowy figure in the background that just slashes all these massage laws, and then, then everybody's going to be told what happened. It's going to be talked about in a forum and saying, this is coming to us from whoever it is, and this is what they're presenting as changes. We talk about it, we discuss it, and again, the public has their time to speak on it before and after, the large chunk of the meeting. And then we're able to take a lot of these deliberations and say, do we agree with these changes that are being proposed, or do we disagree with them? And if we disagree with them, what are the reasons, or what is the data that we have to back up these conversations? Or what is an alternate route that we'd see that we could compromise on in the future? In the end of the day, though, oftentimes misinformation spreads like wildfire. And, we did have an instance last year in which a bill was proposed at the House to combine and consolidate 3 different boards into one. It was the aesthetics, the barbering, and the massage board. And I rallied with a couple of colleagues of mine, a couple other instructors, and we actually held a meeting with I believe he was the co-signer of the bill. But we ended up meeting with our representative and really discussing, why we think that it would be, an unwise idea to combine massage therapy in with that. And ultimately, down the line, it was dropped. But again, all those legislative happenings are in the public forum. And I'll say, if the state board meeting is a little bit dry for you, if you tune into the regulatory process at the legislative level, it's going to be a desert trying to sit there and make it through that. But again, it is public information. It is presented, and we do talk about it at the public meeting.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, that's great, because I always feel that way. Don't panic, everyone. Like, nothing's gonna happen tomorrow. So that's really important. So before we get into some of the fun questions, I did have one more, and something that came up in the last board meeting this week about our responsibility as massage therapists to report situations that are not being handled correctly or inappropriate conduct and things like that. That it's not just an ethical dilemma, do we do it or not, but can you explain like what's actually written about it in our in our statutes and rules?
Yeah, so there are several points that it's talked about in the statutes and rules. And so the statutes are law written into place by the legislator. The rules are ultimately law, what's written into place by the Arizona Massage Board. And so they both operate as law language, but they are from two different sources. What's written in there about reporting duties is not just limited to licensees, but also public members, obviously licensees, but also organizations as well. So education entities, businesses, anybody involved with the process has a responsibility for public safety to report these issues. And so ultimately it's, even say as a self-LMT, if I noticed something that I was negligent or that I broke the law, I would be compelled to ultimately report myself. But, if you're a witness to somebody else doing something, there's within the understanding of massage law in Arizona, we all have a responsibility to protect the public and do no harm. And so this is where it comes in as a responsibility to say, I saw somebody act negligently or inappropriately, or maybe break ethical code, and you would have a responsibility to report something like that. And even with a business, if a business receives a complaint from a client that's legal in nature, then they would have a responsibility or an obligation to report that. An educational institute such as your own, I'm sure that you would have no problem doing this. But if you witness, even students or a member of the public, doing something that you just know is not correct, then you have an obligation to report that. And I think it's very, very interesting that a lot of people kind of don't want to report things. And I think that this is, again, understandable. But at the same time, it does create, it creates some hardships in the whole process to, again, as the board's primary function to provide safety and security to the public and to the licensees as well. And so, that obligation to report is a big part of it. That, again, you're not going to be hunted down and found out if you don't tell on somebody, but at the same time, you may be impacting, indirectly, maybe somebody else's well-being or somebody else's safety in the realm. So, if there's ever any concern, I always say maybe band together as a couple of people and speak as a group if it's hard to do that as an individual, with definite understanding that it can be sometimes to speak as an individual against what you think might be this monster to take on. So
right, exactly. Yeah, it is hard, but for the integrity and safety of everyone, it's important that we do that. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to put the information again with the massage therapy board here, and they have all the information on the meetings, where to report if you need to. I think it's pretty easy to do that from the main website, the main homepage there as well. If people want to check out, please come to the next meeting. I think it's like June 26th or something along that line, like the first part of June.
June 28th.
28th. I was close. 26th was a Saturday. Sorry. June 28th. But you'll see that information on the website there. And then if you want to get in touch with Kevin and check out his massage therapy business as well, that's his website there. And he is very communicative and happy to field any questions or concerns regarding the state board or licensing or just massage stuff. So he's got a wealth of information. Absolutely. So now, speaking of information, you are now in the hot seat, I must say. So we're going to find out some fun stuff about Kevin.
Sure.
So which talent or superpower would you most like to have?
This is never an easy question.
No.
I grew up being very on the nerdy side of things. And so, growing up, I watched a lot of those TV shows and reading a lot of those books and stories. I think when I was younger, I wanted like super speed or flight as just being kind of like the fun power.
Yeah.
As I've gotten older, I've kind of wrestled with some other ones that might be too influential. Most recently, I had this discussion. I think it was with a colleague of mine, and we were just it was a pool day, and we were just talking about some of these questions. But I thought it was interesting, like the ability of a silver tongue and to really put words out there and have them manifest into truth or to convince somebody to do something. At first, I initially thought it sounded like kind of evil, like I'm going to make people be bidding for me. But ultimately, I thought about how interesting it might be to even just speak, benefit. If I could get in front of people and say, live your best life and do well by others, it still might be kind of evil to like go out there with that, change the world for the better. But who am I to say what the world should change into? But I think in the end of the day, I think flight is always a good one. I mean, I want to travel and I want to be able to, see as many places as I can. And I think flight is always a safe one to feel like this is only for me. It's for my enjoyment. And if I could help other people, I definitely could with flight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a very all-encompassing superpower.
Yeah.
If you weren't a massage therapist, what occupation would you have?
It's funny that you mentioned this. I was thinking about it the other day. I've been looking at kind of expanding my certifications and taking on more responsibility. When I was younger, I wanted to be a pilot. I looked into piloting school and what that's like, and even just last week, I was researching, what does it take to be a student pilot or any of this, and I thought, how cool would it be? And funny that we just talked about flight as a superpower. I've always wanted to fly a plane and learn how to do that. So even if I just did it for myself, but there are even like part-time careers. You can be like a part-time pilot. So on the weekends, I'll fly some people.
Yeah, weekends to be flying. I love it. So, give us some rights there.
Yeah.
If money or circumstances weren't issues, where would you like to live most in the world?
I have this thing that I don't really have favorites on a lot of things. And so I like all these different things. I never really put one on top of each other. I think I would choose to live somewhere new every year. I think I would spend a year in one place, really soak it all in and get a grasp of the culture, of the people, of the society that's there. And then I know that as soon as I got comfortable and be like, I could live here forever, I would be like, what is this other place all about? And so I would want to go there and really experience all that. And I don't think you can do that in less than a year. Probably couldn't do that in less than a few years. But, some places that pop into mind is places that I'm half German, so I would want to go back and live there and experience what that is like. I've always wanted to visit Okinawa, Japan. I was in martial arts when I was younger, and so Japanese culture is very fascinating to me. I've looked at Northern European countries, so things like Norway and Sweden have been really interesting to me. And then one that always sticks out is Canada and Australia. Two very interesting countries that are probably very different, but also very similar to our own culture. Those are probably like the top 5 places that I know I'll visit one day once I get to flying around the world. So
I got it. I lived in Japan for 3 years
really?
total, but I never got a chance to Okinawa. And Okinawa, from my understanding, people have been there and been to Japan. It's like they're 2 separate countries. They're completely different. So one of these days too. Maybe I'll get on your plane ride that you're going to be piloting, and we'll go to Okinawa. What is your most treasured possession?
This is another hard one, again, because favorites are hard to come by. I would say that most things that come into my life, I appreciate them for what they are, but when it's time to maybe get a replacement or whatever, I'm not really too tied to it. I would say if I had one thing that I treasured more than everything else that I own, it's a ring that was made by my father. He used to work in a warehouse that made helicopter parts, and so he was able to buy some helicopter engine grade titanium, and he crafted me this ring that I still keep with me. I used to wear it, but over the year with different sports or activities, I've jammed quite a few of my knuckles. So it only fits on my left ring finger now, and so I want to save that for the future. If I ever get married or something like that. But I would say that because it's one thing that was created specifically for me. So I would say I probably treasure that.
I love that story. That's awesome. And then lastly, what would you tell your 18-year-old self?
I think I would tell this to any 18-year-old nowadays: is start saving money in an account that you don't even touch for your retirement. It's funny to think about in me in my path of education, my path of learning things that's focused all on my career and my industry. But then I started, in my 20s, started to learn about other things and said, oh cow, I don't have my savings account set up. And so if I would have gotten started at 18 as opposed to maybe 6 or 7 or 8 years later, my nest egg would be a little bit bigger. But at the same time, I don't see that as a huge hindrance. But my 18-year-old self, start saving money that you don't touch for any reason whatsoever. And get out there in the world, see more of it, experience more of it, listen to people, speak your voice to grow those relationships and learn more from the world itself and not just from the classroom.
Oh, that's awesome. I think that's a starting point for your speaking superpower too. So you can use that as your starting off point. You're going to be like the new Tony Robbins, but for the massage world. I love it.
I could see it.
I'll throw these up one more time. Massage therapy board, massagetherapy.az.gov. Contact Kevin, Bodywork Ethos, right?
That's correct.
.com, and his contact information is on his website. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope everyone who's watching live got a lot of information. Those of you guys joining us on the replay, remember we are live every Friday at 1 p.m. Arizona time. Next week we have Cherie, Sona, and Mo joining us, the business mastery maven herself. Very excited about that, so come and tune in for that. And Kevin, we'll be in touch later. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks for having me.
All right, bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.